back, everybody. Paying tribute today to the man called Neville O'Reilly Livingston. Bunny Wailers. We call him Jabi. Tune called Cool Runnings. One of his signature songs. One of many. This your rhythm is Ital. Dance all go nice. Just rock with Jabi till all night long while the disc jockey plays your favorite song. Bunny Wailers left behind a massive body of work. Was born in 1947 in 9 Mile, the parish of St. Anne, Jamaica. Passed away March 2, 2021 at 73 years of age. Foundation member of the original Wailers, one of the core original trio. Him and Bob Marley grew up together, knew each other from childhood. At one point, their parents, Bunny's father and Bob's mother, were common law partners, making the boys, in essence, stepbrothers. The families moved together to Trenchtown in search of a better life in Kingston. Trenchtown was so named because of the trench that carried sewage from the upper class neighborhoods straight through where Trenchtown was located, the poor part of town. It was in this environment that the original Wailers were formed, taking vocal lessons, song arrangement lessons from the great Joe Higgs at his informal music classes in his Trenchtown government yard, the government yards or housing projects that Bob Marley would later recall in songs like No Woman, No Cry. Tutored by Joe Higgs, they eventually formed the original Wailers, linking up with another local youth named Peter McIntosh, later Peter Tosh, also another singer, Junior Braithwaite. Eventually, the group grew to a large aggregation with the addition of a couple of female singers, Beverly Kelso, Cherry Green, and finally, they auditioned for Studio One, passed the audition, and had an immediate hit with Simmer Down, the buoyant ska rhythms played by the Skatalites, turning that into their first significant hit. Be about 1966 before their debut album would appear as the Wailing Wailers. By this time, the group has kind of pared down to the trio of Bob, Peter Tosh, and Neville Livingston, later to be Bunny Wailer, the Wailing Wailers. Most vocals at this time performed by Bob, although Coxsone Dodd, founder of Studio One, actually saw Junior Braithwaite as the superior vocalist in the early days. Following their time at Studio One, the group went through some changes, pared down to the original trio, as I've said, through some lineup shuffles. Bob moved to Delaware in America for a year or so to work, leaving the group kind of without their leader, their lead singer. During this time, Bunny and Peter had to step up and start writing their own songs, performing more vocals. They brought in another singer, Constantine Dream Walker, for a time. Some of their Studio One material would see Bunny and Peter step forward to do some lead vocals. This compilation from Heartbeat Records, Climb the Ladder, compiles some of these sides with Dancing Shoes, written by Bunny. Also, one of his signature songs, the original version of Dreamland, based off a earlier song by the El Tempos called My Dream Island, readapted with something of a Rastafarian feeling, looking to the east, looking toward Africa perhaps, or also sort of a dreamy romantic feeling to it. Another song, Sunday Morning by Bunny, would later be covered by Gregory Isaacs. I do have that 12-inch, which would appear on one of Bunny Wailer's own labels, Sublime, tuned by Gregory Isaacs. Following their time at Studio One, Bob returned to Jamaica, came back into the fold, but Bunny would be taken out of action for over a year, sentenced to prison, 1 year in prison for marijuana possession. During this time, the group went through various fits and starts, trying to get ahead in the music business, signed with Johnny Nash and Danny Sims's Jad label, worked with Leslie Kong's Beverly's label for a time, and also for Dynamics, also did self-productions on their own Wailing Soul M label. Fits and starts, trying to get forward, meeting with various struggles, but at this period, this formative period, in the late 1960s, going into the very early 1970s, as Bunny rejoined the group, would see the three Wailers emerge. They'd already become a tight-knit group in their time at Studio One, being tutored by Joe Higgs. The late 1960s, early 1970s would see them emerge as distinct individuals, each with their own unique voice in the group, each with their own unique personality, you could say. This period of their work has been very thoroughly compiled in the Complete Wailers series, Volume 1, which has tracks like Tredo, featuring Bunny, many others. Volume 2 features Bunny's Riding High and Brainwashing, late 1960s, early 1970s. This includes the celebrated Lee Perry productions, which saw the Wailers record what many consider the absolute highlight of their formidable catalog to that date. Bob would have a particularly fruitful relationship with Lee Perry, the eccentric genius producer. Peter and Bunny, a little more ambivalent about working with him, reportedly were more than happy to be finished their time with Lee Perry. They had also worked for Leslie Kong's Beverly's label. Leslie Kong, very successful, rock-steady, early reggae producer. Did some fairly pop-oriented work with the Wailers at this point, with the view towards putting out an LP, which he wanted to call Best of the Wailers. Bunny and the group did not agree with this title, feeling that the Best of the Wailers was yet to come. The LP was put out against their wishes, and reportedly the very day Leslie Kong picked the LP up from the pressing plant, he suffered a heart attack and ultimately died. But those tracks are included on this set. Best of the Wailers, included in its entirety on the Complete Wailers, Volume 3, or Part 1 rather. Also have Part 2 on vinyl, or Part 3, sorry. Contains some of the formative songs of Bunny Wailer, Neville Livingston. The early 70s would see the group still at loose ends, finally linking up with Chris Blackwell's Island Records and recording the classic Catch a Fire album. Bunny Wailer there, right there. This would see the group, Chris Blackwell market the group as a rock band, incorporating some of Lee Perry's Upsetters musicians, particularly the Barrett brothers on bass and drums, Aston Barrett on bass, his brother Carlton Barrett on drums, to form more of a full band. And this would feature added instrumentation to cross over to the international market. And it was, of course, classic success. The group finally was poised to bring reggae to the international marketplace on a bigger level than it had seen. Burning would follow in the early 1970s. Again, Bunny Wailer's there. This would feature some of his original songs in Pass It On, which he had written earlier in the 60s, credited here to Jean Watt, his longtime common law wife. Also, Bunny's hallelujah time. Bunny becoming deeply spiritual at this time, as all of them were. Bob was emerging into the icon. He became the statesman of the group, the figurehead of reggae. Peter, with Get Up, Stand Up, embodied the righteous fury of the downtrodden, but Bunny was the spiritual core, the calming force of the group, though no less righteous, no less poised to comment on wrongs in society. The early 1970s, after those two albums with the Wailers, many have speculated why the original Wailers broke up. Peter and Bunny both went solo after the Burning album. Some have speculated a 1973 tour put too much strain on the group after more than 10 years together, struggling to get ahead. Bunny and Peter both had were their own individual people. They had their own music, their own visions they wanted to express. They were not content simply to be a cog in the machine that was becoming Bob Marley and the Wailers, which the group would be branded as following their departure. But the Wailers, more than just being a musical unit, they were a family. As I said, Bob and Bunny were stepbrothers basically for a time. Bunny was also the uncle of Peter Tosh's son, which he had with Bunny's sister. So the Wailers, a family unit, those ties were indelible, regardless of the status of the musical act. Following a 1975 series of reunion performances, Bunny would retire from live performing for several years, not being a big fan of travel, of touring. But the Wailers would continue as more of a loose family unit after Peter and Bunny's departure, while they both formed their own solo labels. They had two names, Intel Diplo Him, Intelligent Diplomat for His Majesty, His Imperial Majesty, and Solomonic. They chose between them. Bunny ended up with Solomonic, which he founded around 1972, 1973 for his solo releases, which he began sporadically putting out. Around 1975, there was a live performance, which would be the last time he would take the stage. Would be a reunion of the original Wailers, as shown on the back cover of Peter Tosh's solo debut, Legalize It. There's Bunny right there with Bob and with Peter. Last performance of the original Wailers, I believe. And this would feature Burial, co-written between Peter Tosh and Bunny Livingston. Meanwhile, the solo singles of Bunny Wailer would be appearing on his Solomonic label. These have been compiled on a couple of releases out of Japan in the last few years. The Solomonic Singles selections. These are also on vinyl, quite expensive though, unfortunately. On the Dub Store Records label out of Japan, Solomonic Singles, 1969 to 1976 here. Includes tracks that did not appear on albums, also different mixes from what did appear on albums. And Solomonic Singles, Volume 2. But in 1976, Bunny would release his solo debut, again through Island Records, still enjoying that relationship with Bob Marley and the Wailers, which were firmly on the ascent to international stardom. Bunny Wailer put out his iconic Black Heart Man album. The Black Heart Man was a somewhat derogatory name for the Rasta man, the Rastafarian, and firmly in a Rasta cultural infused mood here. Something of a Wailers family affair still here. Carlton Barrett on drums, Aston Barrett on rhythm guitar, Tyrone Downey from the Wailers on here. Peter Tosh plays various instruments. Even Bob turns up on harmonies. So something of an extended Wailers family affair, even though Peter and Bunny had gone solo at this time. Absolutely essential reggae album here, 1976. I've owned this copy for more than 20 years, probably. Island label, still got original owners name on the inside there. Shout out to Dave Gosson, who owned this in July of 1978. Classic songs with the title track, something of an autobiographical account of Bunny's journey from being told boogeyman type stories about the Rastafarians, the Black Heart Man, to growing and learning and gathering experience, a little common sense, and then finding that he is in fact trotting the same road they are. Fighting against conviction and the oppressed song, again, Bunny's social conscience, perhaps harking back to that prison sentence he suffered in the late 1960s. This Train, a traditional song, Rastaman, them can't kill the Rastaman at all. If I'm being honest, a lot of the solo work of the Wailers, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Peter Tosh's solo albums, I kind of can't listen to those very often. I can still listen to that album and many of the solo works of Bunny Wailer to this day and still be moved the same way that I first heard it. Following that essential Black Heart Man album, which I would rate as one of the finest, if not the finest, solo album by a former Wailer, he responded with Protest in 1977, still through Island Records. Working here with Horsemouth Wallace on drums, Robbie Shakespeare on bass, Moses Children covering Peter Tosh's Get Up, Stand Up, Who Feels It Knows It, one of his earlier songs in a new version. Dub Disco Volume 1 would appear, mainly dub versions of tracks from the Black Heart Man album, appearing on the Solomonic label. That iconic Solomonic label, one of the coolest reggae label designs, I have to say. Dub Disco Volume 1, Bunny Wailer. Black Heart Man dubs plus a couple of extras. The Struggle album would appear in 1979, I believe. Solomonic again. Includes The Old Dragon, which he would open many of his, later on, he would open many live shows with. The Old Dragon, Lucifer, Bright Soul, Free Jah Children, Power Struggles, commenting on the political runnings in Jamaica of the day. Bunny would contribute the theme song to the Rockers film. Rockers, Bunny Wailers, 1979-ish. The classic Rockers film. 1980 would see him revisit the Wailers catalog. Bunny Wailer Sings the Wailers. Very highly acclaimed version or album, again on Island Records, updating many of the Wailers classics with the updated sound. Robbie Shakespeare on bass, Sly Dunbar on drums, covering again Dancing Shoes, that song he had done way back at Studio One. Dreamland again, all new versions. Rule This Land, I Stand Predominate, Burial, Walk the Proud Land, classic set. But by the early 1980s, the fashion in music was changing in Jamaica, while reggae music was becoming more popular internationally, particularly the roots and culture that had dominated in the 1970s. At home, following 1980, following the early 1980s death of Bob Marley, the music was changing to dance hall, more youth-oriented, more energetic, more celebrating the pleasures of here and now rather than commenting on social issues, Rastafari, repatriation to Africa, and themes like that. Many of the veteran roots-oriented acts of the 1970s were struggling to stay relevant. Some had to focus on the burgeoning international markets, where audiences were more in favor of the roots and culture music that they had become accustomed to, while at home they were becoming irrelevant as a new crop of artists arose. Bunny Wailer wasn't really having any of that. He came out re-energized in the early 1980s, coming to terms with the dance hall sound. He's focused in on the exuberance, the joy of having a good time that was at the core of dance hall music, and started putting out some of the best music of his career. Rock and Groove, early 1980s, 1981, I believe, stands as one of his finest albums. It's a copy on Solomonic. Rock and Groove, the title track, Another Dance, Dance Rock, Cool Runnings, that song we played in the intro, Roots Man Skanking, Ballroom Floor. How does it feel to have been on the ballroom floor? Do you think you can rock some more? Just celebrating the joy of being, the pure joy of being in the dance, the joy of being alive. Bunny Wailer's Rock and Groove, one of his very, very finest albums, almost perfect. Dub Disco, another volume, would follow in the early 1980s, mainly dubs to the tracks from that Bunny Wailer Sings the Wailers album, as well a highly acclaimed, highly regarded series of singles would be appearing on his Solomonic label. One of the most famous is Rise and Shine. This is a reissue out of Japan. Rise and Shine, heavy, heavy song, which would find favor in the UK sound systems. Josh Shaka reportedly played this one. Rise and Shine, Bunny Wailer in a heavy roots and culture mood on that one. Conqueror, Conquering and to Conquer on a Solomonic label. This is original, or vintage at least. Conqueror, backed with dub on the B-side. Collie Man, celebrating the herb, of course. Cool sleeves, matching the label. 12-inch single, extended mixes. Butteration, What a Butteration, commenting on political situations, social situations. Cool Runnings, 12-inch itself. Solomonic sleeve. Give you a good look at that one. Hopefully you can see that. Cool Runnings. Cool Runnings in the Dance Hall from Bunny Wailer. He would link up with Shanachie Records in the US, 1983's Roots, Radix, Rockers, Reggae album. Again, finding him exploring this early dance hall sound. Rockers, theme song from that film is on there. Roots, Radix, Rockers, Reggae, The Conqueror is on there. This appeared in the US on the Shanachie label. Maybe you saw more of a roots and culture oriented releases, but still with that updated early dancehall sound for those US releases. Meanwhile, he was gunning for the dancehall audience at home in Jamaica. Peace Talks, Rockers 12-inch. Again, that Rockers theme song from the film. And Peace Talks actually is the title track of Roots, Radix, Rockers Reggae album. 12-inch single on the Shanachie label. A taste of some of the dance hall music he was putting out. Jump, Jump. Bunny Wailer in exuberant dance hall mood here. Backed with dance hall music. And that is Solomonic again. 1984 on this one. For some reason I have two copies of that. Slightly different Solomonic label, and comes in a nice Rupee Edwards Success disco sleeve with a Studio One shop stamp. If music's your game, Ken's the name. Call Ken anytime. All right, Ken at Studio One. Tears in Your Eyes, another 12-inch single, finding Bunny in a more gentle, romantic mood. Again, Solomonic, 1986. In the early 1980s, he returned to live performance with a highly acclaimed concert in 1982, 1983-ish in Kingston, which was immortalized on a live album. Found him re-energized, ready to retake the dance hall scene in Jamaica. Put out an album in the late 1980s called Rule Dance Hall. That song's actually included on one of those Solomonic Singles collections, Rule Dance Hall, where he sneers, "I've been ruling dance hall since you were a child." And it's no idle boast. The Wailers ruled the original dance halls of the 1960s. Compilation from the RAS label, compiling some of his early 80s singles, some of which we just saw. Crucial Roots Classics. I remember this is a very early reggae find for me, probably on cassette back then. Rootsman Skanking, the CD, kind of a reissue of that Rock and Groove album. Bunny Wailer would continue recording, continue performing. He was unfortunately bottled on stage in the late 1980s, around 1990-ish. Kept at it, kept putting out records, won 3 Grammys in the Reggae Grammys in the 1990s alone. Continued performing, continued recording. In 2018, unfortunately, he suffered a stroke. In 2020, his longtime common-law wife, who had been suffering from dementia, Jean Watt, went missing. Apparently, a gate to their yard, their compound, was left open, and she wandered off. Has never been found to this date. And the stress of this situation, unfortunately, resulted in Bunny having another stroke late in 2020, and he has now, unfortunately, passed away from that. But we're not here to cry. We're not here to mourn. The rest of man can't die. Right now, it's time to dance as we celebrate the music and the life and the legacy of Neville O'Reilly Livingston. It's time to rock and groove. Gonna cause a shock attack. Thank you for watching, everyone. We want to wish cool runnings to Bunny on his journey and send him on his way with love, respect, and honor. Peace, everybody.